We've talked about how the mending of cultures in America has created unique magical beliefs, many times uniquely specific to certain regions. Just think about New Orleans, Appalachia, and the South Carolina lowlands. We've even talked about different ideas and theories as to how these beliefs started and what their origins could potentially be. And I've had a few people ask for updates, such as, when did these beliefs die out? Well, if they ever do, I'll let you know. Today, we're going to look at the root workers and witch doctors of the South Carolina Lowcountry. Root worker and witch doctor are terms they use for themselves, at least in the memoirs I consulted for this piece. Colorful and unique individuals that could be spotted and recognized at a distance, regardless of if you knew them or not. They don't keep their practices quiet. They are their own walking advertisements. And just like with any other profession or personality, you had good guys and bad guys. Sometimes you even had ones that straddled the line in between. For them, it was simply about what the customer wanted, good or bad. Money talks, after all. As you can imagine, those that walk the line or lean totally toward the darker arts, this sometimes brought them into conflict with the law, and most lawmen were not equipped to deal with this. There was at least one exception to this, though. The Sheriff of Beaufort County, South Carolina, James Edwin McTeer. Sheriff McTeer was good at his job, too, serving as sheriff for roughly 37 years. McTeer became a larger-than-life character in the low country of South Carolina, his exploits and cases still talked about today. Most accounts state that Sheriff McTeer even hardly ever carried a gun. He didn't have to, because no one in their right mind was going to cross Sheriff McTeer, and it was all because of his approach to dealing with witch doctors that strayed across the boundaries of the law. McTeer set out to studying anything and everything he could find on the subject, becoming a witch doctor in his own right in the people's eyes, a profession that far surpassed his 37-year tenure as sheriff. In McTeer's mind, that was the best way to battle against those witch doctors with nefarious intentions, to fight fire with fire. Written in Sheriff McTeer's own words, for hundreds of years, the blackness of night has hung with a unique, heavy weight over many of the people on the sea islands and surrounding lands of Beaufort County. When the brightness of day fades into dusk, these people retreat into their homes to await the light the new morning will bring. Silently they sit, saying nothing aloud of what they believe and fear, hidden behind the protective shield of blue and green tinted window frames. For them, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of slaves, the night is more than dark. It is accentuated by an extra darkness. It is a blackness that was carried to the new land by their forefathers, a darkness that is sensed rather than seen. Until recently, it was seldom felt by the white man. In nights only recently past, the throb of drums wafted out of the swamps on the breeze, to float across the farmlands and islands and tell the whole night of this thing that must never be forgotten. Thousands and more sat and listened, remembering the tales by fathers and grandfathers of spirits and hags and things that go bump in the night. This was the darkness of voodoo, Satanism, the black art known here as root. Everyone loves a good, strange, weird, or bizarre story. Well, welcome to the American South, where dark legends and haunted history lurk around every corner. Where superstition, folklore, and a touch of backwoods magic blend with everyday culture. Some say, in order to survive. This is Dixie After Dark. James Edwin McTeer was born May 2nd, 1903, in the small town of Hardyville in Beaufort County, South Carolina. Ed, as McTeer went on to be called, always had a fascination with the occult and supernatural, even as a child, an interest that wasn't unique to just him. He also had two sisters that claimed they could see spirits. Many in the McTeer family believed in the supernatural, being raised on old Scottish legends passed down through the family after migrating to the United States only 4 generations earlier, and being raised in the lowlands of South Carolina, dead center inside Gullah country was just fuel to the fire. Tales of the supernatural and the belief in magic was as natural as air to the McTeer family. In his book, 50 Years as a Low Country Witch Doctor, McTeer gives us a glimpse into his childhood and upbringing. I am asked, how did you become involved with the supernatural? The answer could well lie in a chain of circumstances in which I was involved, and which became part of my life from earliest boyhood. My grandmother, Louisa Gerard Hayward, was the wife of William N. Hayward, a rice planter. On their plantation, she had seen the blacks fresh from Africa, employing their hexes and spells. Being a keen observer, she also saw the enormous power that the black African witch doctor had over the slaves he was in contact with. Grandmother was a very talented artist, poet, and musician, and she was also a strong believer in extrasensory perception and in reincarnation. It was very easy for her to believe that the African witch doctor knew secrets that the white man scoffed at. No overseer or owner of a rice plantation could make a slave refuse his witch doctor's command. So my grandmother, with her sensitivity to astral forces, delved deeper into the mysteries of the occult. Grandmother was a frail woman, but I had seen her join hands with a group of people around a table, and I have seen the table creak and groan as if it were trying to escape. With no apparent effort on grandmother's part, a Ouija board would seem filled with life. The power which grandmother possessed could be translated. She could become a medium or receptacle in which a disembodied spirit could manifest itself. My mother, Florence Hayward McTeer, inherited grandmother's extrasensory perception and her talents. One morning, Mother came to the breakfast table and said, "My brother William's child has had a terrible accident. I dreamed I was in Savannah at their home, and I saw their child swinging in a hammock. I saw her fall out of the hammock as she waked, and a splinter got embedded in her eye. My brother rushed her to the doctor." Beaufort was, then, an isolated island town. 1 train a day was our means of communication, and a trip to Savannah was an all-day outing. We usually went by boat one day and came back the next day. I mention this to show that there was no possible way for Mother to have been in touch with her brother's family. Mother's brother, William, was an attorney in Savannah. Circuit Court was being held in Beaufort that day after Mother had told us of her dream. William appeared at our door that morning. He had come to try a case which had been called. Mother said, "William, I'm so glad to see you. I had this awful dream." Before William could say a word, Mother related to him what she had told us. He said, "My God, Flory, you must have been there. That is exactly what happened, and our little girl has lost her eye." Mother's sister Alice lived several hundred miles from our home in Beaufort. We had not heard from our Aunt Alice for many months when my mother said, "I heard a bell ringing last night. It awakened me from a sound sleep, and as I opened my eyes, I heard Alice say, 'Flory, I've come to tell you goodbye.'" My mother said, My sister Alice died last night at 2 a.m. I will end up getting a telegram." When the telegram came, none of us were surprised. I could cite many more instances of my mother's unusual ability to sense and predict events through her gift of extrasensory perception. I relate these stories to show that from my earliest childhood, I was raised in an environment that exerted a profound effect on my thinking about the supernatural and astral forces that surround our lives. Growing up on the isolated island town, McTeer knew many former slaves firsthand and were friends with many of their children. He grew up learning the Gullah dialect and hearing about their beliefs and practices firsthand. My introduction to African witchcraft began in the year 1912. I was 9 years old. When my family purchased our farm of 400 acres, we gained, in the bargain, Aunt Emmeline and Uncle Tony Legree. Their parents had been slaves on the farm, and when Reconstruction came and they were free, both of them chose to stay on the land that they knew. They would keep their small homes and garden, and do what field work they chose to do to buy the necessities of life. The exact ages of this couple were not definite, but they were in their late 70s or 80s. We, the new landowners, were looked upon with some disdain by this venerable pair. They would condone us, but let us watch our manners. I became the carrier of food to Aunt Emmeline, and the buyer of medicine for Uncle Tony. Little did I know that it would be these two ancient Africans who would introduce me to African black magic and witchcraft, and who would enlarge my vocabulary with such words as juju, put the mouth on you, root, hex, and spirits of the night. I respected Aunt Emmeline, but when I took milk, hot biscuits, and so forth to her, I could not resist the temptation to tease her. I would say, "Aunt Emmeline, what is this I hear? I hear you're going to take a new husband." She would answer, "You white children are so devilish. How do you think I'm going to take a man when I'm almost ready for the graveyard? Your sassy mouth going to cause me to put a mouth on you." "How you going to put a mouth on me when you ain't got a tooth in your gum?" I would ask. "I ain't put the mouth on you with the tooth. I put the mouth on you with the mouth. You best listen, or I hate you when I'm dead. If I put juju on you, you gonna break out all over. I'm gonna make you wet the bed, and your ma will trash your backside. I'm sure gonna hate you when I'm gone." When Aunt Emmeline died, we all went to the funeral. She was buried beside the road, and her grave was covered with all of her cherished vases and pots. 2 nights after the funeral, I went for the mail. The hour was late, and it was dark when I had to pass Aunt Emmeline's grave. I was riding a skittish pony, and I closed my eyes as we drew near to the burial site so I could not see her spirit. However, the pony could see, and he shied as we came abreast the grave. I was thrown, sprawled amongst Aunt Emmeline's treasures. I really panicked, as I had not forgotten her warning that she would haunt me for teasing her. I got up off her grave in high gear. The pony must have taken a shortcut, or I surely would have passed him. I arrived home out of breath and told my parents the story. Dad always said afterwards that I beat the pony home by 10 minutes. Mother said, "Well, Aunt Emmeline is laughing at how she paid you off for your sassy mouth." McTeer's books are full of different accounts that gives us a glimpse of his upbringing and events that helped shape his beliefs. It was as a teen, though, that McTeer tells of his first-hand eyewitness to the work of a witch doctor and the power it held over the believers. Written in his own words in the memoir High Sheriff of the Low Country, McTeer tells of a time when his own father was sheriff of Beaufort County. There at the county jail, trustworthy prisoners were allowed to work in the jailhouse yard. There were 2 prisoners in particular on that crew that would often slip away during their shift to visit their family or girlfriends for a few hours, then return undetected, or so they thought. One of the deputies, though, a Deputy White, had become wise to the events and knew it needed to be quelled soon before they became more emboldened. One day, young McTeer was delivering some fresh-baked cornbread to the jailhouse to go with the prisoners' lunches when Deputy White was waiting at the gate for him. The two prisoners in question were also there, working in the yard. Deputy White called the two prisoners to the gate and told them, "You've left this yard for the last time. I've got a root powder from Dr. Buzzard, so step back and watch." Deputy White then pulled out a small tobacco sack from his shirt pocket and poured from it a white powder in the entryway of the gate, making a sign of a cross. He then turned back to the two prisoners and said, "If you want to go out again, just walk over this. But if you do, you'll never walk again." McTeer watched on in astonishment as fear took over the two prisoners, and they backed away from the gate, and time would reveal to McTeer that the two men never left the prison yard again until the day their sentences were up. McTeer never found out why Deputy White did this in front of him, or if it was just coincidental timing. Regardless, though, this was one of the events that set McTeer on studies that would shape the rest of his life. Not only was McTeer's interest piqued by this, but he had a genuine desire to understand the people around him as well. In his own writings, McTeer tells how even though he had extensive experiences with what he referred to as the country's colored people through association with his father, he wanted to really know them. He set out to learn their histories and traditions, and to find out what blocks they experienced in society. In short time, the young man had built an extensive personal library from a multitude of African scholars and works, on top of what he had learned within his community, Beaufort County at the time having a population of 200 white citizens and 10,000 black citizens. By then, McTeer had heard well enough about the various witch doctors in the area, and now his studies were, in some cases, correcting some knowledge he had about them, but in many more cases, confirming what he already knew. As McTeer tells in his writings, a witch doctor inherits the mantle of a witch doctor from his own practicing father. And in a strange twist of events, Ed McTeer would be no different. You see, while McTeer's father was serving as sheriff of Beaufort County, South Carolina, he passed away, and the governor appointed Ed McTeer himself as the sheriff to finish out his father's term. Another passing of the mantle, so to speak. Witch doctors inherited their mantle directly from their fathers, who were sent here as slaves to work in the rice fields. We frequently heard the names of those who practiced voodoo in their respective sections of the Sea Islands. Alliston Hamilton, known as Dr. Crow, held forth in the Burton area. Peter Murray, Dr. Bug, controlled the Broad River territory. There were several lesser practitioners, Dr. Hawk and Dr. Snake among them, who also practiced. They were condoned by the true witch doctors as long as they did not infringe on their rights. One of the greatest witch doctors was Dr. Buzzard. He attained national recognition. His true name was Stephanie Robinson, and in my opinion, he was king of them all. His father was a witch doctor, shipped here as a slave. He had no sooner landed than he let his power be known. Among his subjects, fresh from the African jungles, his words were law. The rice planters soon realized that he would never submit to slavery, so they gave him a great latitude of freedom, and he in turn tolerated them. In Africa, the witch doctor performs at almost every occasion. He tells you when to plant, fight, or hunt. He will put a hex on your enemy, and your enemy will die. If you are ill, he will exorcise the evil spirit from your body with his potions. He is omnipotent. he will dictate the taboo of what your family must not eat. But if he failed to make good predictions to the king, he was sold into slavery. Or if his tribal chief was defeated in warfare with another tribe, the winning chieftain would sell him along with the other captives. This is how the first Dr. Buzzard made his appearance in America. It was his son, Stephanie Robinson, who inherited his mantle, and who became king of all the witch doctors. That was when I became sheriff of the county in 1926. Little did I dream then how deeply I would become involved with the black arts. I knew that my background knowledge in this area would help me to be an effective sheriff, but I was not satisfied with what I already knew. I wanted to know more of African lore. I avidly bought and read every book I could find on Africa, its tribes, and early explorers. My collections of books on Africa is probably now one of the largest in the state. In the year 1926, the sheriff of a small county was an important person. Every facet of the citizens' lives were brought to his doorstep. Only felony cases were brought before a judge. He was truly the high sheriff. With this responsibility resting heavily on my shoulders, I knew that certain practices in the world of hexes would have to stop. A true witch doctor casts his spells and invokes the astral forces to do his bidding. He does not administer medicine. But I knew that some of the doctors, looking for a quick dollar, would give roots for anything, including syphilis and gonorrhea, smallpox, and so on. This I would try to end. With my background in witchcraft, I knew that stopping the tides would probably be easier than eradicating thousands of years of belief in the power of witchcraft. The people were now my responsibility, and with the authority vested in me as Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Beaufort County, I would try to end the administering of medicine by the witch doctors. I had no intention of attacking the belief in witchcraft. I believed then, as I do now, that there is a definite need in the people's lives who believe in the supernatural, that there be someone for them to turn to when troubles beset them that they have no explanation for. I would lay my plans carefully to build a case against Dr. Buzzard. Then I would bring him before the bar of justice for malpractice. If I could make a case strong enough to obtain a verdict against him, the satellite of doctors would take heed and the practice would come to an end.
This, though, would prove to be easier said than done. As soon as they started trying to build their case, Dr. Buzzard knew something was up, and the witch doctor that was once wary of authority turned completely tight-lipped about his operations. The first hint of this that Sheriff McTeer got was from an informant who said that the customers that left Dr. Buzzard's home, who had previously did nothing but sing the praises and powers of Dr. Buzzard, now left his door as quiet as a mouse. They said nothing to no one about why they were there, what was done, or whether things worked out or not. The flow of information stopped completely. The next bit of information that McTeer received was from the post office. He had informants there too, since Dr. Buzzard's practice had now reached outside of Beaufort County via mail order, requesting lucky numbers, asking him to remove hexes, things like that. Dr. Buzzard had come to the post office one day with a stack of postal money orders from clients, all payable to him. They were happy to cash them in for Dr. Buzzard, but they instructed him that he would have to sign for them with his legal name. They said he just politely smiled and held out his hand for them. When they returned the money orders to him, he calmly ripped each one into small pieces and dropped them in the garbage. The postal worker reported that they amounted to over $1,500. Sheriff McTeer knew he would need an airtight case before he could make any sort of move on Dr. Buzzard, and it didn't look like Dr. Buzzard would be making any mistakes anytime soon. It took some time and patience, but eventually McTeer found someone that was willing to flip on Dr. Buzzard, and it all happened purely by accident. A young man had been arrested for breaking and entering, and while being processed at the county jail, they found a small pouch with various herbs and powders in it, or what the witch doctors referred to as root, sewn into the man's waistband of his pants. Different roots and the styles they were crafted in were often unique to different witch doctors, and McTeer immediately recognized this one as the work of Dr. Buzzard. The young man was in a panic when they found the root, having been told that if he showed it to anyone, the root itself would turn on him. Now, although there were no laws against root work itself, it was what else was found in the man's pocket that caught McTeer's interest. A small bottle with some sort of yellow liquid in it. Sheriff McTeer held up the bottle and said, "This came from Dr. Buzzard, didn't it?" But the man said nothing. But things suddenly changed when McTeer held up the crafted root. "I know this came from him," he said as the young man grew visibly nervous. "I recognize his work," McTeer continued. "Let me guess, this was supposed to prevent you from getting arrested." Even though the man stayed quiet, his eyes told Sheriff McTeer that his guess was spot on. "And if I'm right about that, then you showing this to us is going to bring back some bad luck your way. Bad luck at the least." "I didn't show it to you," the man said, unable to hide the fear in his voice. "I'm sitting here holding it," McTeer said calmly, "looking at it in my own hand. I wonder if it knows the difference or not." The man went to say something then, but McTeer interrupted him, placing the root out of sight. "Well, I can see to it that bad luck stays away from you, but I'll need a little help from you. I'm a witch doctor too, and I can undo any charm of Dr. Buzzard's, good or bad." "What makes you think you're stronger than Dr. Buzzard?" the man finally asked. That's when McTeer just smiled. "His root was supposed to protect you from getting caught. Well, here you are. Now, you have to admit, either I'm stronger than him, or his roots don't work. Believe what you will, but it has to be one or the other." The man pondered over this for a few seconds, then said, "I've heard you practice witchcraft. The same, but different." McTeer ignored the comment and went back to the bottle with the yellow liquid. "Now this, what did Buzzard say it would do?" The man dropped his head, but ultimately responded with, "He said that I had something evil in me, and a teaspoon of that every night before bed would kill it." Now McTeer was getting the information he was looking for. "I can take away the effects of Dr. Buzzard's root on you, but if you'd be willing to testify against him about selling medicine, I can make the charges for breaking and entering go away too." "No jail?" he asked. "Not if you help me," McTeer assured him. The young man nodded his approval. "I believe you. I'll tell Dr. Buzzard to his face that his roots and medicines don't work against you." That was all Sheriff McTeer needed to hear. He immediately sent a deputy to bring Dr. Buzzard to the sheriff's office, with strict instructions not to let him know what was going on. One, he didn't want to spook off Dr. Buzzard, and two, he knew he had to act fast while he had the cooperation of one of his clients. In short time, Dr. Buzzard walked into the sheriff's office. He never said a word, though. He took a seat at McTeer's desk, but angled his chair to where he could see the man in the holding cell. Before McTeer could even say anything, the man in the cell started swatting himself, like there were bugs or something on him. Dr. Buzzard kept staring the man down. Then the man collapsed to the floor, frothing at the mouth. Sheriff McTeer knew that his session with Dr. Buzzard was over before it had even started, and his deputies rushed in to save the young man in the cell. Dr. Buzzard finally turned to Sheriff McTeer and addressed him. "Are you through with me?" McTeer reluctantly conceded, "For now, but if you keep giving your customers medicine to take, I'll find one that you can't put a spell on." Dr. Buzzard only smiled. "You do your job and I'll do mine." And with that, he walked out of the sheriff's office. Yet again, Sheriff McTeer realized this was going to be harder than he had originally thought. Much harder. Sometime later, at a term of the General Sessions Court, Dr. Buzzard was there in the gallery, chewing the root for his clients, in an effort to get them off scot-free or with lighter sentences. Chewing the root was a ritual where the witch doctor would be in the court, chewing on selected roots or herbs, then discreetly spitting out the juice in the courtroom. This was believed to work powers against the judge, lawyers, jury, or all of the above. When the court returned from lunch recess, the bailiff came to Sheriff McTeer, bringing his attention to a white powder that had been sprinkled over the desks of the judge, the prosecuting attorney, and even McTeer's himself. McTeer knew what this was, so he discreetly went and tapped Dr. Buzzard on the shoulder, then led him outside. "I should drag you before the judge right now," McTeer scolded him, but then contained himself. "I'm not going to do that, though. This time. Sit there and chew your root all you want, but no more powders. Understand?" Dr. Buzzard only nodded. "I hear you," he mumbled, then returned to the courtroom. In the days that followed, McTeer got word that maybe he was pushing Dr. Buzzard too hard. According to an informant, Dr. Buzzard had been openly heard stating that he was going to bring down Sheriff McTeer. McTeer told the informant, "We'll see whose powers are stronger. You tell Dr. Buzzard that trouble is close to him, and I don't like to be threatened." The game was on, and each side went about working their spells as they saw fit. Word on the street was that Dr. Buzzard had crafted a root that would make McTeer deathly ill, a suspicion McTeer realized one day when meeting Dr. Buzzard on the street in the town. Dr. Buzzard smirked and asked McTeer how he was feeling. "Just fine," McTeer said. "Had a bout of the sniffles about 3 days back, but I guess it was just a 24-hour thing." Dr. Buzzard was visibly shaken by this, and McTeer just continued on his way. Things reached their breaking point days later, though, when Dr. Buzzard's own son, the one that was being trained and set up to inherit the doctor mantle one day, lost control of his car in a rainstorm. The car slid off into a flooded causeway, and Dr. Buzzard's son drowned. It's interesting to note here that throughout his memoirs, Sheriff McTeer never says what roots or spells he crafted, if any. Throughout his books, he's very subtle and humble about his abilities. The same is true about the car accident. He never explains the roots he worked, or even says if he was involved with the accident or not. He simply explains in his books that, quote, "Fate was with me." He tends to let the reader believe what they want to believe, and it seems the same was true for the citizens of Beaufort County. A couple days after the drowning of Dr. Buzzard's son, McTeer returned home from work to find Dr. Buzzard himself sitting in his car in McTeer's backyard. McTeer cautiously approached the car as Buzzard got out. Dr. Buzzard retrieved a cage with 2 live chickens from the seat beside him. "A gift," Dr. Buzzard stated. "Let's you and me be friends. I've got powers, and so have you, I can tell. I won't make any more medicines. I'll just deal with the spirits." Sheriff McTeer offered his hand in truce. "That suits me, Doctor. And I tell you, I'm giving up black witchcraft. All I want to do from now on is help afflicted people." And in a surprising turn, Dr. Buzzard offered his help. "I will teach you a lot of things I learned from my own father. Your work won't interfere with mine. I know you've been taught some, but I'm getting old, and I want you to know what my father taught me. Then you can do people good. But as for me, the big money is in black witchcraft, putting hexes on people, so I'll do both, put them on and take them off. You can take them off, if you can." And with that, Sheriff McTeer and Dr. Buzzard joined forces, and McTeer, standing in the Gullah community, quickly rose with the powerful Dr. Buzzard accepting McTeer as a witch doctor himself, one Dr. Buzzard viewed as even more powerful than himself. And Sheriff McTeer closes that section of his book stating that, to the best of his knowledge, Dr. Buzzard kept his word and no longer gave out medicine. McTeer tells of many more run-ins with other witch doctors throughout his time, but the people of Beaufort County considered Dr. Buzzard the most powerful, and with McTeer's victory and subsequent truce and partnership with Dr. Buzzard, many believed now that McTeer was in fact the most powerful witch doctor. By this time, the older, true witch doctors with ties to their homelands were all near death, if not already dead. Sheriff McTeer understood the honor he had as being accepted into this culture that otherwise shunned outsiders, so he set out with a new plan. People were coming to him for help from all over, so McTeer was careful to let everyone know that he was only a white witch doctor, that he had given up the darker arts after seeing what harm they could do. This slowly started putting an end to the darker side of witch doctors in the low country of South Carolina. McTeer didn't end with that, though. He used his prestige as a respected sheriff to start a campaign of sorts with his medical doctor friends. McTeer tried to convince the medical professionals that no matter what they believed, these people believed what they were telling them, and that they needed quick response help if they ever opened up to a medical doctor in the area. If not, the community would fall into chaos. Their beliefs were ingrained into them from generations of belief, and any dismissal of that could cause patients to fall into sickness, death, or even murder to seek help elsewhere. It was a hard sell to the high and mighty medical professionals, what with their high salaries and education, but it all worked out in the long run. The people that McTeer had been accepted by were low-income people, so they usually couldn't afford medical care anyway. Besides, they didn't trust the white doctors, and it was very rare that someone from the community would open up about their spiritual needs to them. As for Sheriff McTeer, though, people continued to flock to him for help. McTeer saw the comfort and hope that it gave people just to acknowledge their beliefs. In his own words, "People afflicted with a spell want help from a kindred spirit, one who will listen to him and start attacking the problem at once. It would take a lot of courage for them to admit that they needed help, and the help they were seeking would be from someone who would understand, and in whom they could have complete faith. Yes, someone who would say,
Yes, you do have a spell on you, and you came to me because you believe I can remove it. I am a white witch doctor, and I will remove it completely. Personally, I know it works. I believe I can remove black magic spells if caught in time, and I have saved literally hundreds from insanity, murder, suicide, and I have also saved many marriages. My hardest job is convincing my clients that a white witch doctor cannot accept pay. This is hard for them to understand. I tell them that if I accept money, my root will be of no value, and that it will turn on them and me.
James Edwin McTeer went on to serve as sheriff of Beaufort County for 37 years, but his time spent as a witch doctor lasted for many years after that. His prestige in that field grew and grew, and he was invited to give guest lectures at many colleges and organizations all across the country. McTeer continued this work, helping the communities of the South Carolina Low Country until his death on December 28, 1979, at the age of 76, and he was buried in the Sacred Ground Cemetery in the same county he spent his entire life helping. McTeer's legacy and stories continue to live on in South Carolina, especially in the areas of Beaufort County. There is even a bridge connecting Beaufort and Ladies Island named James E. McTeer Bridge in his honor. For those of you that enjoy figures or subject matters like this, I highly recommend the two books, High Sheriff of the Low Country and 50 Years as a Low Country Witch Doctor, both written by McTeer. In High Sheriff of the Low Country, McTeer not only tells of his exploits with witch doctors, but also of his times chasing moonshiners, rum runners, murder cases, all kinds of things that the job of sheriff brought him into. 50 Years as a Low Country Witch Doctor focuses on his experience with what he calls witchcraft. It's written by McTeer himself, so the point of view can be a little biased to those that know different types of beliefs, but it's still an interesting read, and I can't wait to reread both again outside of the pressure of research. McTeer is quickly becoming one of my favorite individuals I've come across while doing these videos, and if I really stop and think about it, I believe it's because of a simple fact. Underneath all of his exploits, his careers, and his writings, Ed McTeer had a simple approach to things and the people around him that I've always carried myself, one we've mentioned here several times before. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters what they believe.